Hi, I'm Stephanie from Museums.love. There is something exciting happening in the German History Museum in Berlin, the Deutsches Historisches Museum, or DHM. The entire permanent exhibition is being redone. A huge job. There are 6,000 objects in there. Its transformation will take until 2025. The exhibition covers the history of Germany all the way from antiquity to modernity, and it occupies the entire front building of this two-building museum. Today I want to give you a last look at how this exhibition has been for the last 15 years, including two of my all-time favorite museum objects, and give you a sneak peek at what's in store for the new exhibition. The focus of our tour today is not just on the collection or the museum, but on the way the collection is exhibited in the museum. This sort of study belongs to the field of museology, the study of museums. So our tour today is museological. This is also a great word to pull out at your next cocktail party. So let's get started. The way the exhibition is organized now is chronological. So you start at the earliest period in antiquity and wind your way around through the centuries, top floor and bottom floor, until you get to modernity at the end of the exhibition. As you walk around, it's easy to orient yourself with these lighted towers that always tell you where you're at with the time period at the top, as well as usually some of the important dates of that period. Whatever new orientation the new exhibition chooses, I hope that it's as effective as this one because I find it really good. My favorite part of the museum is the earliest section, like this one between 900 and 1500 CE. This is the area that has not only the best variety of objects to my mind, but also some of the most unexpected objects from daily life. It shows you a really different side of the history that we might know from textbooks or from the more canonical sources. Take knights, for instance. As soon as you enter the exhibition, you can see this knight in shining armor on his horse. This is the canonical image that we have of a knight, something we'd all recognize. But the museum doesn't stop there. It also shows you a different side of knighthood that you wouldn't have expected. Let's go take a look. This is a prosthetic arm from 500 years ago. It probably belonged to a knight who lost his arm in battle. And it's made so that the fingers can be activated by a button on the forearm. It shows us a totally different side of knighthood. Knights are not just the invincible heroes riding around on horses. They sometimes suffer terrible bodily injuries that they have to live the rest of their lives with. And this arm also shows us a sort of technical ingenuity that we might not have expected for this time period or for this purpose. For the same reason, I absolutely love two objects in this museum that give us a really different, more personal look at some of history's greatest events. This tent is an Ottoman construction that was used in the Siege of Vienna in 1683. That event is world-changing for European history, but it's dry and fairly faceless if you just read about it. For me, it was this object that really made it come to life. This is the place where an Ottoman in the army slept, planned, maybe worried if he was ever going to get home. It shows us a very practical side as well as a very human side of an event that can otherwise be pretty faceless. The same goes for this hat, which Napoleon was wearing when he was defeated at Waterloo in 1815. Now, this is a turning point for European history, but again, maybe a little bit dry just to read about it. When you see this hat, you realize it was on Napoleon's head when he was defeated. It's so personal. There's probably still sweat stains on the inside of that. And to me, that's what opens up a whole new view onto these events that we know from school textbooks. Another exhibition technique that I really like at the DHM is the way of bringing books and old documents to life by juxtaposing them with other objects. Books are really important for the study of history. In fact, they're the thing that separates history from prehistory, which has no written documents. And yet books and documents are not very often amusing to look at themselves. The DHM solves this problem by putting books next to other objects that really draw you in and give you a sense of what the book is about without having to read anything first. In this case, a book is set next to a sort of club carved into a fist and shackles. All of these objects relate to capital punishment in the 16th and 17th century. The book is a legal manual. The club in the shape of a fist was used by judges in death row trials, and the shackles were for prisoners. The arrangement draws us in and shows us how books, just like the tools of physical punishment, made up the judiciary system of the time. Like books and documents, portraits of historical figures can also be difficult to appreciate. Many of them look the same as many others, even for such an impressive person as August the Strong of Saxony. But in the DHM, instead of just having the portrait hanging on the wall, there are two spears on either side that, for me at least, act as a magnet to draw you in, make you interested, and make you want to see what also the portrait is about. Downstairs in the 20th century section, this sort of mixing of objects is really reduced, where we get mostly works on paper, like prints and propaganda posters. But the DHM has a really fantastic collection of propaganda posters, so this is fully justified. Although I miss the mixing with other objects, the posters themselves are fascinating, and I suspect will play a big role in the future exhibition as well, especially the posters that show the racism of the Nazi period. These have a big relevance to racism today. The permanent exhibition as it is now ends in the year 1994, in the aftermath of Germany's reunification. The last object we see is this set of containers holding flags from the GDR's Foreign Affairs Office, which of course was defunct after the reunification. But I will say it feels a little bit abrupt to go from this out into the lobby again, when 27 years have elapsed, but they don't get talked about at all at the end as a sort of goodbye or a closure to the exhibition. I think this is something that might be different in the coming version of the permanent exhibition, which is supposed to have more focus on the international and more focus on the world of the present day than this exhibition does. Especially because the museum is still actively collecting objects, this would be a great way to spotlight recent acquisitions from recent history, like the pandemic, as well as pressing contemporary issues like decolonization. This sort of intensive renovation can lead to a simplification and a reduction of the material on show. We saw that in the Altes Museum when it had its renovation in 2010-2011. So I'll be curious to see if the new exhibition preserves the number of objects and the level of detail that's in the text that we see today. In any event, there will be some new sections in the new exhibition that I'm really excited to see because I think they show a modern and community-oriented approach that we desperately need in the Berlin museum landscape. One of these will be a section for kids and teens to give a more family-friendly atmosphere. Another section will focus on the history of the building itself, which was built as an armory, but then went through several museum phases before it got to the phase of the museum we can see now. The new exhibition will also focus more on Germany's international relations. I hope this means that the Turkish tent will stay in the exhibition. Finally, there will be a perspective change in this new exhibition that I'm really excited about. It'll focus more on the subjective nature of history. Events are interpreted and reinterpreted into the histories that we know today. They're not simply a succession of objective events. That the interpretation of history is subjective is, I think, one of the most important things that we can learn from a history museum or any history lesson. So I'm excited to see how they make that present in the new exhibition. The reopening in 2025 is a ways away, but the good news is one half of the museum will remain open, the special exhibition half in the so-called Pei building, named after the architect that built it, I.M. Pei. Exhibitions in there will continue to be shown until 2025 when the historic building reopens. Until then, I'll keep you updated online on museums.love. I'll see you there.